Hello everyone and welcome to our card review of the Boomsday project cards. We're going to be going through all the cards and rating them on a scale of 1 to 5. Joining me for this, I have Pandemonia, and we're going to be going through the neutrals first of all. So to give you an idea of how our rating scale is going to work, 1 are your trash or unplayable cards like Duskfall and Aviana. 2 are your fringe playable or niche tech cards like Dire Frenzy or Mossy Horror. And 3 are your playable in some decks like Life Drinker. 4 kind of staple in multiple decks like Houndmaster Shore. 5 are your meta-defining meta-defining cards. These are cards that either they define their own archetypes or they are ever present in the meta. Cards like Shadowwalk, which obviously spawned Shadowwalk Shaman, and that leads to a pretty powerful deck in the meta. So jumping straight into this, we're going to be doing the neutrals first, as I said. With the class reviews, we're going to have some deck lists as well for you to check out and try out on day 1. But we want to get some context for the set by looking at the neutrals first, because those are the tools that all the sets are going to be sharing. So, first up, Pandemonia, we have Mecha'thun, the card that generated a lot of discussion so far. Mecha'thun is a 10 mana, 10/10 mech. It's a legendary, and it has Death Rattle. If you have no cards in your hand and battlefield, destroy the enemy hero. So we've got an alternate win condition here, Pandemonia. How excited does that make you?
So, alternate win condition, yay. The fact that it's Mecha'thun, nay. Like, I'm all for winning the games in different ways, but Mecha'thun, it's not a bad concept, in terms of, like, everything needs to be dead, basically.
Yeah.
But realistically, trying to pull this off, I'm not convinced that you can reliably pull this off.
Yeah, most notably, it's very susceptible to polymorph and silence effects. Ultimately, I don't feel that this card is very good, but there are two. I don't even want to say playable. There are 2 reasonable-ish combos to work with Mecha'thun at the moment, and I mean, the idea that it could be a card that is obviously a finisher in a combo deck is something that's tempting, but I just feel like there's a lot of other better ways to do it. We can go over those 2 kind of ways. The deck or the class which draws cards the best right now is probably Druid. And we'll see an example in Druid. We've actually got a Mecha'thun example from Dog, which is kind of like to basically heavy cycle with Gadgets and Auctioneer and to innovate, naturalize your Mecha'thun, because that's the one way you can kill it the turn you play it and avoid the transform effects and whatnot. But I'm not convinced about that. The other alternative is a Warlock deck where you play the 2 mana mech that reduces mechs in your hands cost by 1. You play that twice, you get Mecha'thun to 8 mana. You play Mecha'thun into Bloodbloom Cataclysm in order to discard your whole hand, destroy the board. So you destroy the Mecha'thun alongside the rest of the board, and you also discard your hand. And Warlock is the one class that can kind of draw cards naturally the best without any actual cards because of the hero power. So you could even pull that off in an even Warlock, theoretically, because all those combo cards are even.
Sure. I'm not convinced, though. I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I mean, this is a card that I fundamentally want to give it a 1 to kind of say to everyone, this card is bad, don't try it, don't craft it, like, just don't. Ultimately, though, any card that kind of appeals as something that is a combo, a win condition, feels like it should be better than that. I think if this was anything else as a win condition, I might give it a 2, but for me, I think I'm going to give Mecha'thun a 1.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 1. But the problem is, right, is that if this deck somehow does turn out to be good, it's going to become a 5, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about it.
It is a card that you're either very wrong about or very right about.
It's either a 1 or a 5, is basically what I'm saying in this card, right?
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the same with,
an uninteractable win condition. If you can kill it, the turn you play it, then yeah.
I mean, it was the same with Quest Rogue, right? I mean, it's like a very similar
Yeah.
sort of vibe.
But Mecha'thun is no Caverns Below. So yeah.
Right.
Next up we have Ziliax. Ziliax is a 5-mana 3/2 mech with magnetic, divine shield, taunt, lifesteal, and rush. It's a legendary. When we first saw this card, I wasn't really sure if there was going to be enough enough mech support, if you were going to be able to curve out in a way that you could actually make the best use of Ziliax. But so far, from having a look at all the cards, Ziliax seems like the best payoff for magnetic, which says to me that if you're playing any magnetic decks, you want to run Ziliax. So the magnetic decks that maybe stick out to me so far, we'll see in the classes as well. Maybe Warrior because of Dr. Boom being so powerful, and possibly Paladin because they have the 1-drop, the 1-mana 1/3, and they also have Kangor's Endless Army, which is great with Ziliax. Because, if you bring back something that got all these keywords on it, that's going to be pretty effective as well. And I mean, it's probably the one where you're going to have rushing mechs. I'm not sure Skaterbot is something we're going to be playing in those decks. But yeah, I mean, I think Ziliax seems like a solid 4 for me. It's not enough to force me into wanting to play magnetic decks, but if I'm playing one, I probably want Ziliax in it.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, that's like basically one of the reasons to play mech decks, like you've said. So,
yeah,
I think we don't need to say anything more about Ziliax. Pretty good. I'm going to give it a 4.
Yeah, same. And then next up we have Subject 9. Subject 9 is a 5-mana 4/4 legendary battlecry. Draw 5 secrets from your deck. Realistically, it's also a beast. Realistically, how often do you think you're actually going to be drawing 5 secrets?
Yeah, I don't foresee. Like, this is a card where I don't think you're drawing 5 secrets. Maybe 3-4 is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
The problem is like what deck it slots into. Like for me, I think Hunter and Paladin are kind of the 2 classes where I don't think it goes in Mage because it's too expensive, like we said.
Yeah.
But like Hunter is probably where it fits in because it's got the Beast Energy as well.
Yeah, I mean, like we discussed in our first impressions video when we saw Subject 9 for last episode of Magma Rages. What we said is basically 1 mana, those secrets are all too low impact to want to put in your deck and to draw. 3 mana, they're all too expensive, they're going to clog up your hand, and so that only leaves you with the 2 mana ones. So that's Rogue and Hunter. Rogue just doesn't have enough to warrant. You don't have 5 different secrets, you have 3 different secrets, so that's the most you're going to draw. Rogue has better ways to draw than that. So Hunter is kind of the only one place you want it, and even then, I think there's better things for me to do for 5 mana in Hunter.
Yes, so like the Death Rattle dude that we talked, the Death Rattle dude.
Sure. I mean, I'm not even convinced that that's going to be that great, but I still think that's better. So for me, Subject 9 is just going to get a 2, because maybe if there's a deck that has a payoff for playing the secrets in the future, it'll see some play. But for now, I mean, it's a 2. And I mean, it's certainly not something I would ever suggest anyone craft. So I'd say it's almost bordering on a 1, but I'm going to go with 2. Next, we have Whizbang the Wonderful. This card is going to be a very difficult one to rate because this is not a card. These are 18 decks. Whizbang the Wonderful is a 4-mana 4/5. That's all irrelevant though because you start the game with one of Whizbang's wonderful decks. For flavor, this would clearly be a 5. But if we're talking actual power level, I think that you get one of the 18 deck recipes, the 18 most recent ones, so excluding the classic deck recipes. So ultimately, I'm not convinced that the deck recipes are going to be powerful enough to warrant playing Whizbang. It's definitely a card which can be fun for newer players, but
yeah, it's a card I would suggest. Honestly, I would suggest if you're new or are lacking collection, I would say that's a good legendary because it's got 18 decks essentially. But from a competitive point of view, historically, from what we've seen with deck recipes, some of them have core ideas of tier 1 decks, but they usually aren't tier 1 decks. So at best, they're like tier 1.5 to 2 decks.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are far worse. So, and the fact that you can't choose which one you're playing, so it's definitely a 1, unfortunately.
The inconsistency of playing this on ladder means that, like, I'm actually not going to say it's a 1. I'm going to say it's a 2, but I think it's a 2 in a very different way to how we usually define 2s. I think it's playable, But it's not something that like it certainly will never impact the tournament meta in a relevant way. It might even just get ruled out of tournaments. Who the hell knows, because it interacts weirdly with the whole banning system. But it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, I think it's playable, but it's not. Yeah, it's a 2 at best for me. I mean, I think it'll see play, right? That's the key thing. Like that kind of
as a meme.
yeah, it'll see play, but how much of that is because it's any good is a different story.
Yeah.
Definitely not something worth crafting either, I don't think. And then finally for the legendaries, we have Harbinger Celestia. Harbinger Celestia is a 4-mana 5/6 with stealth, and after your opponent plays a minion, become a copy of it. So 4-mana 5/6, that's pretty good. With stealth, that's not even nicer, but the effect is definitely a big downside.
Yeah. So you pay 4 mana for a 5/6, and basically the first thing your opponent plays. So now it's like basically, as people have said, it's a face-up mirror entity, and so your opponent just has to play something really weak, and you've spent 4 mana. So against aggro, it's horrific. Against control, it could maybe be a little bit better.
Maybe. I'm not even convinced there.
But like most of the times, they could just play Doomsday.
Yeah.
And you're sad.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
Harbinger Celestia, it's a cool idea, but for me, it's a 1.
It's a card that your opponent has to only be playing big minions for it to be any good, and even then, the payoff is not that high. So, just getting a 5/6 for that doesn't seem like something I really care too much about. So, I'm also going to go with giving it a 1. Although it almost does fall into the tech card realm, right? Talking about it in that context, but I still think it's going to be a 1.
But when do you take it though?
Yeah, there's just other better ways to tech. I think. Then there has to be better ways to tech against slow, greedy decks than Harbinger Celestia.
Yes.
Next we have Star Aligner. Star Aligner is a 7 mana 7/7 epic minion with Battle Cry. If you control 3 minions with 7 health, deal 7 damage to all enemies. I mean, we've spoken about this before. Incredibly difficult to get to happen. And
if you do it, you're winning.
Yeah, you do it, you're winning. And the payoff is not even that high at that point. 7 damage to all enemies is great, but like, if I get the stars to align, I want to win the game on the spot. I don't want to... this is like harder than pulling off Blood of the Ancient One, probably. And that was like if I attack with the Blood of the Ancient One, I win the game, right? Unless they have like 50 armor. So Star Aligner is just a solid 1.
A solid 1. It would be 0 if it existed.
Yeah, if we had anything lower than 1, it would be there. And it would be there alongside Holomancer. Holomancer is a 5 mana 3/3 epic. After your opponent plays a minion, summon a 1/1 copy of it. Why are they going to play any of their good minions into this once again? This is even worse version, or even worse like case of Harbinger Celestia, because you get a bad body up front. And like, they're just going to remove it. If they're a deck that only has big minions, they're just going to remove Holomancer. It doesn't even have stealth. It can't even threaten to do anything. Like, it's just a 1. Much like the minions it summons, it's a 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
You're on board there with it being a 1, right?
No,
Cool.
fully
I didn't expect any argument there. Next up, we have Sephorium Bomber. Sephorium Bomber is a 5 mana 5/5 with Battle Cry. Shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. When drawn, it explodes for 5 damage. Reminiscent of Iron Juggernaut, the warrior legendary, but with scaled down here for the epic, kind of card grouping, I would say.
Yeah, and it's the nice thing though is it's a 5 mana 5/5. So I foresee it actually seeing play. It's like, I think it's a mech as well, I believe.
No, it's not. It's not a mech.
It's not a mech.
No, it's a like goblin person.
Because I'm just trying to think, is a 5/5 good enough to just see play and the potential upside?
I mean, I know my answer. My answer is that it's a 1. I think it's unplayable. It doesn't matter that it's actually okay on the vanilla test. There's just so many other things you can do on 5 mana that are better than this that I just don't see us ever playing Sephorium Bomber. It's not as bad as Star Aligner and Holomancer, but to me, it's still a 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 2 because I think there is a point where it might come handy, in terms of shuffling that bomb. I don't know how. I don't know why, but I feel like
I don't see how that bomb is that good. Like, I just don't see the decks where the bomb has enough impact, If you want to kill your opponent fast, if that's your plan, it's better to play more aggressive 5 drops than to play a card that shuffles in something into their deck, and maybe when they draw it, it's going to hurt them. Like, when they draw it, it'll hurt them, but it's going to take a while before they draw it. They're going to be able to stabilize before then, perhaps.
Sure.
We'll definitely see some Sephorian bombers into opponent's top deck for lethal Trollden videos, though.
Yeah, or double. There's ones that double.
Yeah, but I still think it is a 1. And then next up we have EMP Operative or EMP Crab. EMP Operative is a 5-mana 3/3 epic minion, battle cry, destroy a mech. 5-mana minions that destroy minions. Valspine Slayer is the obvious example. This one only destroys mechs. I'm not that sold on any of the mech archetypes that I think they're going to be so powerful that we really want to play EMP Operative versus any other card that can destroy a minion. Like, that's not a hard ask from 5 mana.
Yeah, this is kind of the definition of our 2, right?
I agree.
But it's a bad. But
it's a bad 2. It's a bad 2. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that we define 2 as tech cards, and this is by definition a tech card, I would say it's a 1. So I agree. It has to be a 2.
Yeah, it has to be a 2, but not a good 2.
No. Next up, we have Loose Specimen. Loose Specimen's a 5-mana 6/6 epic with battle cry. Deals 6 damage, randomly split amongst other friendly minions. So if you play it by itself, it's just a 5-mana 6/6. Otherwise, it's going to be hurting your own guys.
So 5-mana 6/6, pretty solid stats. It's pretty a beefy 5-drop. Obviously, it's got the downside of deal 6 damage split, but there are some decks, specifically, decks that run Acolyte of Pain, that don't mind the 6 damage being spread amongst your own minions.
Yeah, maybe even some warrior decks that have some other damage-based synergies, or decks where or decks where you can pop something like an egg that has a positive death rattle for you.
So it's a sort of what they're moving to the interesting designs of like giving us like buff minions, like sort of overstated minions with like what you could argue are drawbacks. So
yeah, it's basically a case of what are we gonna accept as what is an acceptable downside on a minion. And to me, this is not acceptable when I can also pay 5 mana for an 8/8 Bittertide Hydra. So I'm gonna say Loose Specimen is a 1. If I look at comparable cards, I don't think this is acceptable. Maybe there's a reason where you can turn this upside into a downside. That's the one saving grace for the card. But I think in almost all the Death Rattle decks, there's also better ways to do that. To proc your Death Rattles.
I think it's not that bad. I don't think I would give it a 2 because I think that a 5-mana 6/6 is still, I think, decent enough in sort of slower decks where you don't want to run Bittertide Hydra. Bittertide Hydra is more an aggressive card where I think this might see play in sort of slower control decks with less minions, right?
Yeah, or like more mid-rangey decks maybe where you can trade off and then play it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's why I'm going to give it a 2.
I know what you're saying, but fundamentally I can't see myself playing this card. That's why I want to give it a 1.
Yeah.
I just...
you see, I can see myself playing this card. That's the thing, right? I could see it in...
You really want to play Acolyte of Pain into this? I'd rather just play Acolyte of Pain into 3 Warpaths in Warrior, which is probably the one class that cares about it. You can... the bright side of this is you can play this to kill your own Shadowwalks. If you're, playing Shadowwalk Shaman.
Okay, I'm not quite sure why you're going to do that, but sure.
For one, it's other friendly minions. And for 2, that means you will never have a situation where you have a full board of Shadowwalks, although that's almost impossible.
And generally, if you've done that, you've won.
Sure. But anyway, I'm just saying that's a meme on the battle card. I don't know. I'm still gonna go with a 1. I'm being cautiously pessimistic on that card. I agree. There are some. It's definitely better than some of the other ones, right? But not by much. Next, we have Omega Defender. Omega Defender, a 4-mana 2/6 epic with Taunt and Battle Cry. If you have 10 mana crystals, gain +10 attack. First thing I noticed on this is they changed the art, so that it didn't look like you were actually a mech inside a giant, or you were like a giant robot mech. Now it actually looks like a goblin inside.
Oh, they
some
changed it.
armor.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, they definitely changed it. Because I was also like, in the very first art of Omega Defender, when they revealed it, I was like, but this looks like it should be a mech. I'm confused. and they've been fixing so many inconsistencies. I think they were like, yeah, let's go with an alternate art for that one.
Oh, that's interesting.
They have alternate art. Anyway, Omega Defender, 4-mana 2/6, that's unplayable. I don't care about the 10 mana crystal bonus in Constructed. That's kind of, I think this is a 1. Once again, I think I'm being a little harsh, and compared to some of the other ones, it's not as bad, but it's still a 1 to me. I don't want to play it.
Yeah, for me, like I think it's bad, but like for me, I lean towards giving it a 2 because like it's not that bad.
I think you're just
it's
being
bad.
nice.
It's bad, but not. I mean, it's bad, but it's not super bad because it has the potential upside on turn 10.
Yeah.
I
don't think I'm anyway. That's all right. You can give it your 2, and we can move on. Next, we have Weaponized Pinata. Weaponized Pinata is a 4-mana 4/3 mech with it's an epic as well. Death Rattle. Add a random legendary minion to your hand. Random legendaries not necessarily that good. I haven't really done the maths on this one, but for a 4-mana 4/3, I'm not happy with that. I'm gonna say it's a 2 rather than a 1 because maybe there's some decks where you actually care about the Death Rattle to generate you cards. That's literally the only example, and that's probably just a kind of very grindy priest deck. That's maybe the one place. But even then, I think there's probably better Death Rattles to play. But I think the Death Rattle stuff might make it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and the legendary, like random legendaries have quite high variance.
Yeah.
They range from so it's one of those ones where, like, you run one of these in your deck, and you could pull a Deathwing, where you can pull something absolutely crazy, right? So that's how I also have to give it a 2 there.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the average stats, the average stats are actually going to be pretty good for a random legendary, but the variance, the standard deviation in those stats is really, really high.
Law Kacho.
Yeah, because cards like Law Kacho. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 2. You also on the 2 train?
Yeah, 2 train.
Okay, and next up we have Augmented Elec. Augmented Elec is a 3-mana 3/4 beast. Whenever you shuffle a card into a deck, shuffle in an extra copy. So this works very well with cards like Felderai Strider, and something like that the bomb Sephorium bomber that we saw earlier. Works, the Darkness is one of the other curve options after this. But largely it's for Felderai Strider and perhaps Lab Recruiter, one of the new rogue cards that I can see Augmented Elec being played. So
and for the ultimate meme, Archbishop Benedictus.
Sure.
for the ultimate
or Dire Frenzy is also an interesting one. So I don't know. I think to me this card is just naturally a 3. It's playable in some decks. But it's something that's kind of, even in a lot of those decks, I'm willing to cut if I don't need to have these extra copies in my deck a lot of the time.
It's a solid 3-mana 3. A 3-mana 3/4 is pretty solid.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it just helps your deck to get a little bit more staying power a lot of times, I think.
Yeah.
You can play it on play it on some, being able to shuffle like an extra legendary or, Baleful Banker now becomes, but does this make Baleful Banker better?
Maybe, but I mean, you have to play what you want to shuffle in, play Augmented Elec, and play Baleful Banker in the same turn, theoretically, right? Or one of them one of those things has to stick beforehand. So, yeah. I mean, that's the big thing. That's kind of a sticking point there for me with that synergy in particular. I think obviously Rogue is kind of the main standout for it.
Yeah.
There's also Astral Tiger and Druid, although we've never seen that card really be enough to warrant playing in any Druid decks because there's just other better Druid cards, basically. But that is another
Yeah.
thing that shuffles in that is vaguely relevant.
Yeah, so
So
it
yeah,
helps a
3.
little bit again, but yeah, so 3.
Cool. Next up, we have Crystallizer. This is a 1-mana 1/3. It's an epic, and it reads Battle Cry. Deal 5 damage to your hero, gain 5 armor. Interesting text to have on the 1-mana 1/3. I mean, it's relevant for some decks like Warrior, where you care to have armor. Druid, where it can buff your Spellstone when you gain the armor. And also Warlock, where it can buff your Spellstone when you deal damage to yourself.
Yeah, so I think this is actually pretty good as a 1-drop. It's basically, the neutral 1-mana 1/3 that like some decks, like some classes have been waiting a long time for.
Yeah. I mean, the big
and
thing
like
for
you
me is
say-
that it doesn't have like follow-up synergy. Like a lot of the best 1/3s we've had in the game have some kind of follow-up synergy. You know, the nutty examples of Tunnel Trog and Mana Worm, obviously, and then the slightly more reasonable ones of Vilefin Inquisitor, which it gave you the access to the Murloc hero power, and B, it had the follow-up with the Rockpool Hunter on the turn after. And that's kind of similar with some of the mech 1/3s we're going to see in Paladin and that. But for me, that's the one big sticking point with Crystallizer. You actually have to be able to make use of this deal 5 damage, gain 5 armor thing.
So I think it looks like Warlock has some synergies with dealing damage to yourself.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's got that.
I mean, it's better than Diamol in Warlock, right? That's kind of what we're saying. If you're playing the Spellstone,
Yeah.
or if you're playing any of the other cards that care about hurting yourself, even the Happy Ghoul and Voodoo Doctor kind of shenanigans.
Yeah, and also in like Warrior, it can immediately proc a Shield Slam.
Yeah.
So I mean that's you can play this and Shield Slam, which is I think not a bad not a bad combo.
I mean, I think for Warrior, the more interesting thing is actually this into Bladed Gauntlet, the 2-mana weapon that has attack equal to your armor. Because then you can actually control the board straight away with that 2. You have essentially a 5/2 weapon on the first attack. So I think that's actually a really good tempo tool for the Warriors if you can curve like that.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. Maybe Player Gauntlets is the card makes a comeback.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that deck exists, but I think that's actually a pretty useful synergy for it. So, I mean, I think I'm going to give it a 3. I don't think it's actually enough to push any of those decks further than, more into existing than they currently do. But I think it's playable. Ultimately, I think it largely suffers from not having that extra kind of tribe or some other thing tacked on.
I'm going to give it a 4 because I think it's going to be like, even though the synergies in those classes, I think it's going to be really powerful in those classes. So
yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I think it's not far off a 4. There's a lot of other 1-drops even in some of those other classes that I might rather play. The Warrior one is honestly I think the least or the most underwhelming synergy, ironically, for a card that gives armor. Even though it does also activate your Battle Rage. And the Bladed Gauntlet. I feel like those are better than the Shield Slam thing because, like, in a Control Warrior deck, you kind of want to gain armor in different ways for Shield Slam, and maybe we're playing Shield Slam in a Tempo Warrior deck then, but then a lot of the time Shield Slam is very bad, so I don't know about that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe with the other Warrior 1-drop that also gives you armor, the Beryllium, whatever it is, the bot.
the Eternian Rover.
Eternium Rover, yeah. That could also force us to play Shield Slam, maybe, but I'm not convinced. But yeah, I think the other synergies are pretty solid. So I'm gonna give it a 3. I think it's playable in some decks, but not in. It's not going to be a staple. To me, for a neutral to be a staple, it needs to be a decent card in quite a few different classes, and this is, I think, pretty limited to Druid and Warlock mostly. And then next up we have Arcane Dynamo. Arcane Dynamo is a 6-mana 3/4 rare. Battle Cry, discover a spell that costs 5 or more. No. It's a solid 1.
No.
I'm never paying 6 mana for a 3/4 that does an effect that's not that good.
I'll pass that.
1. Cool. We can next. We have missile launcher, 6 mana 4/4 mech, magnetic. At the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to all other characters. This hits your own stuff, unlike Dreadlord. I know it's unfair to compare a neutral to a class card in a certain extent, but I just think missile launcher is a 1. 6 mana for a 4/4 buff, even in that case, is not that good. And then it can also hurt your stuff, maybe, unless you just have one big mech. No, it's a 1.
Yeah, I don't want to pay 6 mana for that.
Nope.
Then
count me out.
The next card is Mechanical Whelp, a 6 mana 2/2 mech. Death Rattle summon a 7/7. So this is similar to the eggs in quite a way, but at 6 mana, it's a bit too expensive for my liking. I don't think the cube shenanigans are going to be worth it at that point. So for me, that's just an easy 1.
Yeah, I mean, it comes with the upside compared to the eggs that it can actually attack. But in order to essentially pay for that cost of it being able to attack, they actually had to push it up in its mana cost, right? That's the key thing here. It's a little bit too slow for an egg effect to me, and as you say, it's not really worth it. The only possible place I could see it is in some Death Rattle Hunter synergy decks, where you want to copy Death Rattles from your deck or pull this from your deck and get the Death Rattle, and even that, I'm not convinced. So I think I agree. Mechanical Whelp is a 1.
In Hunter, you still just want Savannah High main, so...
Yeah, definitely.
Next card is Spark Drill. 6 mana, 5/1 mech with Rush and Death Rattle. Add 2/1/1 Sparks with Rush to your hand. So 6 mana to deal 5, basically 5 damage, pieces of removal.
Yeah. And you get
How
the
do you
2
feel about
1/1s.
that? 2/1/1.
My first impression with this is garbage. The only possible application for this, and also Steel Rager that we'll see a bit later, is Quest Druid. I've come to realize because of the 5 attack. Being able to remove something and progress your quest is actually not so bad. So that's actually a relatively reasonable application for it. And then, if the Shaman legendary spell, if you can summon a bunch of 1/1s and play it, that's the best use I can think of for the Shaman spell. So the fact that those are the best uses I can think for this means it's a solid 1 to me.
Yeah, it's a 1.
Cool. And then next up we have Giggling Inventor. Giggling Inventor, 5 mana 2/1 with Battle Cry. Summon 2 1/2 mechs with Taunt and Divine Shield. This one seems like it creates an incredibly difficult board to deal with. It takes 5 attacks to clear up this whole board. 2 into each of the Annoyatrons, 1 into the Giggling Inventor, and that's very difficult to do on turn 5. Spreading Plague has kind of taught us that, and this is one that isn't dependent on your opponent actually having a board.
Yeah, this is the new Sludge Belcher for me, so this is a 4. This is, for me, this is a 4. I'm in love with this card. You know how much I love Taunt.
I do agree. I actually like the comparison to Sludge Belcher as well, and I agree on giving it a 4. I think it's also going to be a little bit better for aggressive decks than Sludge Belcher was, because you can make use of the multiple bodies with cards like Fungalmancer, and just generally those kind of go wide strategies.
And the magnetic as well, right?
Yeah, and with the magnetic and the mechs.
You're just going wide for the magnetics.
Yeah, and thankfully the Inventor herself is not a mech, although that would be weird from a robots creating robots, kind of perspective, but also importantly, it means if you're resummoning them with anything like Kangor's Endless Army, you're not getting back the 2/1. You're just getting back the Annoyatrons, which are much better to get back. And then we have Replicating Menace. Replicating Menace, a 4 mana 3/1 with Magnetics. Summon 3 1/1 Microbots. Basically bigger Egg Napper. Egg Napper was bad. This is bad. I don't want to pay more mana for it. I don't care if I'm getting an extra 1/1, and I don't care if they're mechs.
Egg Napper saw a little bit of plain token druid, but got cut very quickly, I think.
Yeah.
I do not see this 4 mana for 3/1. Yeah, no thanks. No. So it's a 1 as well for me.
Yep, like its health total and the Microbots it summons, it is a 1. Next we have Galvanizer. Galvanizer is a 2 mana 1/2 mech with Battle Cry. Reduce the cost of mechs in your hand by 1. This is no Mech Warper. That's the first statement to make.
Sure. 2 mana 1/2 stats wise, pretty terrible. You almost never. You never really want to be playing this on the board. So the problem with this card is, from what we've seen, the mech it looks like the mech decks want to be sort of board orientated tempo decks.
Yep.
From what it's kind of my feeling. And Galvanizer is not what you want to be playing as a tempo drop.
Yeah. I think the only fringe application I can see for Galvanizer is in any kind of combo deck that can make use of mechs.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm struggling even to see a good use of that one. So I'm gonna say Galvanizer is a 2, just because it has that fringe possibility. Reducing cards, even by small effects, can be decent. And if we are playing a deck with like 26 mech minions that are mechs, which is I don't think you can do right now. Maybe if they keep printing mechs in future expansions, then maybe Galvanizer is okay. But for now, I'm gonna say it's a 2 at best, and I think that's being kind, honestly.
Yeah.
Next we have Underpowered Mauler. Underpowered Mauler, 2 mana, 2/4 mech. Can only attack if you've cast a spell this turn. Thoughts?
Ooh, like 2 mana, 2/4 stats is pretty decent. Can only attack if you cast a spell. I mean, it's now.
I mean, the idea is you curve like this into that 3 mana 1/5 with taunt or something, so that at least you get the taunt even if you don't attack. That's kind of one of the, leaving this on the board can lead to a little bit of a snowball scenario. But the fact that you have to spend a card, and that's the key thing, spending a card is what you have to do in order to allow this to attack. And usually if you're playing a spell in a turn, that gives you less mana to actually, play minions with. So it gives you less mana to kind of, utilize the magnetic portion if you're magnetizing onto this. And it gives you less mana to actually, increase your tempo lead that you get from having a 2/4.
Yeah, and the problem is it doesn't have anything like taunt as well. So like your opponent, it's like, okay, cool, you're running out of spells, just has to ignore, doesn't have to do anything with it, right?
Yeah. And I think the other interesting thing is, we've seen Vulgar Homunculus, a 2 mana 2/4 with the downside that it deals 2 damage to you. And that also has taunt as well. It's a demon, so it actually has a relevant tribe. And that card couldn't even see play outside of even Warlock that just wanted some demons with taunt. That's the only reason it sees play in that deck. Because it has some relevance when it's brought back from Gul'dan and buffing the Spellstone. Like, it's not something we even see in Zoo, which is where you would think you'd want a 2 mana 2/4. So I think unpowered Mauler is a 1.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you there. I initially was thinking about giving it a 2, but then I realized, wait, it's probably most of the times not attacking. And I mean, a 2/4, I don't think it's worth trying to constantly try activate it, right?
Yeah,
so and even for me as well.
Even if we're talking combo priest, where you can cast spells on it, buff it, you're probably better off just playing something like an Ancient Watcher, and then at least having it even start at a higher health total.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, in priest, I'd rather just play Ancient Watcher and silence it. I only have to cast a spell once, right?
Sure.
Next up, we have Spark Engine. Spark Engine's a 2 mana 2/1 mech with Battle Cry. Add a 1/1 Spark with Rush to your hand.
So, I mean, you're getting 2 mana for 3/2 worth of stats, which is okay. The splits over a 2/1 and a 1/1 that you have to still play for 1 mana, probably.
Yeah, so it's still 3 mana for a 3/2 worth of stats, because you actually have to play that Spark.
Yeah, which is not great. I don't... Also, once again, as a 2-drop, I don't think it's impactful enough. Like, you don't really want to play a 2 mana 2/1 turn 2.
Exactly. It's not sticky to kind of help with the mech idea of, sticking minions to the board and magnetizing them. So, I mean, Spark Engine just seems like a solid 1 for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then we have Bulldozer. Bulldozer, 9 mana, 9/7 mech with Divine Shield. The classic, big dumb minion for the set. Kind of pack filler. Something that is relevant in maybe Arena as a big dumb minion if you care. An upgrade or a downgrade on Force Tank Max? I'm not even sure. Because I'm not sure I'd rather pay 1 mana for 2 attack at that, 8 mana and 9 mana. I'm not sure I care. So, whatever. It's a 1. You'll never see constructed play.
Yeah, never.
Unless there's a way to somehow cheat out your mechs, like recruiting them or something, you'll never see constructed play. And even then, I'm sure there's better ones to do that on.
Yeah.
Like the damaged Stegatron, for instance, which is a 6 mana 5/12 mech with taunt and Battle Cry deals 6 damage to this minion. So The
big
injured Blade Master / Witchwood Grizzly of mechs. I mean,
Yeah,
6 mana, 5/12, really good if you can maybe just recruit it out of your deck. I think it could maybe see play in some like Recruits Warrior. You know, is this better than playing Sleepy Dragon in Recruits Warrior? Or do you want to still play Sleepy Dragon because you want to maybe sometimes pull it out with Dragon Hatcher if you actually care to play that in the deck as well? I think we've lost Pandemonia briefly, but yeah, I mean, Damage Stegatron. I think this card actually has more potential than it seems like on its surface, but right now I'm just not really seeing a place for it, so I'm going to have to give it a 2, but I think it's kind of a 2 that is one to watch, because it does definitely have some potential as well moving forwards. And then next up we have Rusty Recycler. Rusty Recycler is a 5 mana 2/6 mech with Taunt, Lifesteal. That seems a bit underwhelming for me. 5 mana 2/6. I mean, maybe it sticks around a little bit for the mech stuff, but for magnetic. But ultimately, I don't see this card as playable. It seems like a solid 1 to me as well. It seems like we have Pandemonia back now.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah,
Sorry, you just seem to freeze up for a bit there. So Damage Stegatron, what did you settle on there?
I settled on a 2 because, you know, it's just a big taunt that has potential upside.
Cool.
So
yeah, it was the same on that one. Yeah, Rusty Recycler, I mean, I already went over it. I think it's terrible 1.
Yeah, I also gave it a 1.
You have any arguments for it? Next we have War Gear, 5 mana 5/5 mech with magnetic, kind of one of the most vanilla-y magnetic cards. I do like its versatility. I think it's okay. It might be something you slot into magnetic decks in order to help the curve if you need a 5-drop, because it has a little bit of potential for versatility in those decks, which I think is not something to be underestimated. So I actually think War Gear is maybe a 3 even,
Really?
which is kind of pushing it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's playable in some decks. Those decks being specifically the mech decks, and only if they're lacking 5-drops.
Even the mech decks, I feel like there's usually better 5-drops. Giggling Inventor, I feel like a lot of other things are just generally better.
Giggling Inventor is going to be better a decent amount of the time.
So I'm going to give this a 1. This is a 1 for me.
Okay, I'm going to stick with my 3. I think War Gear, it's easy to underestimate how good getting 5/5 buff that can, you know, attack that turn if you are getting it for the magnetic on the board is. I think it's a fair thwack to the face. Better than playing a Seathorium Bomber.
Can you give it a 3 or 2?
3.
3, okay.
Next up we have Steel Rager. Steel Rager is a 4 mana 5/1 mech with Rush. Yeah, so the upgrade on Magma Rager here, it's got some mechy armor, and it has become Steel Rager.
Oh boy.
I mean, once again, I think the synergy here is with Quest Druid. I think that's the only reason I ever want to play Steel Rager is Quest Druid. So I think that's then kind of by definition a 2 for me. It's a fringe playable because unless Quest Druid becomes really good, I'm not sure.
For me, it's a 1. I just think there's always something better on turn 4 you could be doing.
Like, for instance, I mean, in Quest Druid, even if you Oaken Summons it out, that's actually not bad as well. You know, Oaken Summons,
there's
you pull it,
ways to
you
kill
get...
it.
Yeah, but it has Rush.
The
It has Rush.
Sure.
I mean, that's the best. I'd rather Oaken Summons it than play it from my hand. But I'd also rather Oaken Summons the 5/1 with Death Rattle that summons another 5/1 because I progress my quest more. But I do legitimately think it matters that Steel Rager progresses the quest in Quest Druid.
Yeah, sure. You can give it a 2.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 2. Then we have Piloted Reaper. Piloted Reaper is not the piloted shredder of the set as much as it's trying to make you think it is. Piloted Reaper is a 4 mana 4/3 mech. It's a common. It has Death Rattle. Yes, that's all the things that Piloted Shredder has. But this Death Rattle summons a random minion from your hand that costs 2 or less. I think you'd have to be playing a deck with a lot of cheap minions to make this work.
So there's a lot of debate as to whether, like, the fact that it's not a random 2-drop, is it an upside or downside? Because you can now control it. but you're not getting an extra 2-drop. So it's still a 2-drop
Yeah.
that you actually have to run in your deck now.
And it's a
So I think,
resource that comes from your hand, which is also
yeah.
important.
So I think arguably, I think this makes it significantly worse than Pilot the Shredder.
Yeah. I mean, if this
But
pulled
I
a 2-drop from my deck, I think it would be significantly better than Piloted Shredder, actually.
But even so, 4-mana 4/3 that you get you a 2-drop from your hand, I still think is pretty solid.
I
Like in
actually
terms
think,
of like being
I mean,
sticky.
I'd go as far as saying even if this was Piloted Shredder, I don't think it would necessarily see that much play right now. With the way Hearthstone has evolved since GVG, when Piloted Shredder was a card, I'm not actually. I think Piloted Shredder would be a 3 at best right now, even
Okay.
though it was so good back then. So Piloted Reaper is just going to be a 1 for me, maybe a 2. Okay, fine, we can give it a 2. I think it's better than some of the other things I've called a 1, so I'm going to give it a
Yeah,
2.
for me it's a 2 as well.
Explodinator is our next card, one of the many Goblin Bomb themed cards. It's a 4-mana 3/2 mech. It's a common as well. Battlecry, summon 2/0/2 Goblin Bombs. Another way to get a bunch of cheap minions on the board, a bunch of mechs on the board. Giving you essentially 3 mechs. Great to get you a target for Magnetic, but I think the card that's coming up after this is probably a better option for that even.
Yeah, Explodinator. I don't think something the Boom Boss is good enough. I mean the
Goblin
Goblin
Bombs.
Bomb. I just think the next card we can talk about is better, but also even just going back to the Giggling Inventor, right? I mean,
Yeah.
should cost 1 mana more, but a 4-mana for 3/2. No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know whether we care enough to have like this token mech deck. Like, I don't really see a payoff for the token side of it that's being pushed in a lot of these.
Savage Raw.
Yeah, there's so many better ways to create tokens. Even it's like Druid, right, which is the one deck that actually has a way to make use of the tokens. So I don't know.
For me, it's 1.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with giving it a 1. I'm just not sure I can see a way to use the Goblin Bombs that well. Next up, we have Coppertail Imposter. Coppertail Imposter is a 4-mana 4/4 mech with Battlecry, gains stealth until your next turn. This, as we said, is a better way to set up Magnetize because you're getting a 4/4 stealth.
Yeah, a 4/4. I mean, 4/4 stealth sets up quite nice. As some people have already sort of alluded, this could go in a Shadowwalk deck. As soon as you have this in the pool, you can then now play Shadowwalk without having even played Serenite, as long as you have something like, let's say, Grumble or
Zola.
Zola in your hand, because now he gives himself stealth. So I really think this is quite a solid card. I mean, and like you say, even in just mech decks, it's a solid body to magnetize. So for me, it's a 3.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 3. I think it will probably see less play than the number we're giving it, to be honest, because I'm still a little underwhelmed. I honestly, I think Coppertail Imposter into War Gear is actually not that bad. And it's one of the reasons I don't mind War Gear that much, because you just get to thwack them in the face for 9 if you play that. I mean, you kind of spend 2 cards over 2 turns, but you have a 9/9 on the board and you thwack them in the face for 9. I like that. So I'm going to give Coppertail Imposter a 3. Next up, we have Brainstormer. Brainstormer is a 3-mana 3/1 Battlecry, gain 1+1 health for each spell in your hand. So, not like Twilight Drake, not cards, spells. What deck really wants to have a bunch of spells in its hand and play a... Well, it's not a 9/9, it's only health that it gains. It seems like Pandemonia is breaking up a bit again, but we'll get him back in a sec. Oh, there we go. Looks like he's back. Twilight Drake is decent. Brainstormer is not. I really don't want to waste more time talking about this. Brainstormer is terrible. You don't want to have a bunch of spells in your hand. This sucks. Don't play it. It's a 1. Microtech Controller, 3-mana 2/1 with Battlecry. Summon 2 1/1 Microbots. So once again, another way to kind of get these tokeny minions on the board. I think this honestly still looks better than something like Explodinator, because at least you can do something with those bots. And I don't really think that damage that comes from the goblin bombs is all that relevant. So, I mean, we gave Explodinator a 1. I'm pretty tempted to just give Microtech controller a 1 too, though.
Yeah, that's what I gave it, a 1.
Yeah.
I don't think a 3-mana 2/1 is just too low tempo.
I mean, this makes that 3-mana 2/1 that gave you 1-drops in your hand look really bad because you're getting 1-drops on the board now.
Well,
the Ravencaller.
Bad 1-drops, but no battle cards, right?
Sure.
I mean, there was like a lot of 1-drops are better than 1/1s.
Okay, that's true. That's fair.
I mean, a lot of them are 2/1s.
But I mean, I think I'd still rather have 2 1/1s on the board than 2 1-drops in my hand. You know, 2 birds in the bush. 2 birds in the hand are better than 2 birds in the bush, but in this case, the hand is not your hand. The hand is the board, and yeah, that analogy is confusing.
No, it's 1 bird in the hand is better than 2 in the air.
No, anyway, that's
it's
not.
Better to actually have 1 than to potentially have 2.
Yeah, I mean that's the point, but I was purposefully messing it up because of how the whole hand thing doesn't make sense. Because in this case, the hand is the board. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And that like a bird, that one flew right over your head. And next up we have Kaboombot. Kaboombot is a 3-mana 2/2 mech with Death Rattle, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion. No. I mean, I don't think this is a reason to incentivize people not to kind of trade into it. Sorry, it seems you're... Wow, okay. You are breaking up quite horribly right now. So I'm just gonna mute you so that sorry, you've gone full robo at the moment. Oof. Anyway. Hello? Okay. Yeah, it seems like we're back. Sorry, we went super full robo there, so I had to just mute you so that it didn't kill everyone's ears that's listening.
Okay, back.
Yeah, it seems like it for now. So Kaboombot, thoughts?
It's not great, but I think it has some, because the deal 4 damage to a random minion could be useful.
I think you're stretching because you feel bad after giving so many cards a 1. This is a 1. Stop feeling bad.
Yeah, I feel like I want to give it a 1 as well. But,
yeah, this is a 1. It's a 1.
Yeah.
Bronze Gatekeeper, 3-mana 1/5 mech with magnetic and taunt. I mean, this is one of the ways to give your mechs taunt if you care. I don't know if I care. As a 3-mana 1/5, it's horrible. I mean, we've seen how bad 3-mana 1/5s are in like Tar Creeper. If you think about how bad it is when it's your turn and you can attack, imagine how bad it is when your opponent gets to attack into the 1/5 as well. So, honestly, I think this is at most a 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna give
and that's
it
being
2
kind.
I still think there's the potential with it's got potential with like magnetize.
Yeah.
I mean magnetics. So being able to give something +1 and +5 taunt, I think could be like, if you put this like upgradable frame bot, right?
Sure, but even upgradable frame bot, it's then only becomes a 2/10.
A 2/10, yeah, which I think is not bad.
Yeah, I mean maybe
It's a thick wall.
Maybe in like the magnetic combo priest deck.
Sure, maybe.
Anyway,
yeah,
I'm not convinced.
I'm gonna give it a 2. And you?
Yeah, no, 2 as well. Like it's fringe, it's very fringe. And then we have Electro-Right. Electro-Right's a 3-mana 3/3 with Battlecry. If you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, gain +1/+1. The big issue for me here is what kind of aggro decks, because I think that's what you want a possible 3-mana 4/4 in, are going to play a 5-mana or more cost spells. It's like maybe Spiteful decks.
And even then, 3-mana 4/4, is it even that good?
Yeah, you have to have the spell in your hand. And if you're any aggro kind of deck, you don't want the spell in your hand on turn 3. Things have gone badly if you have the spell in your hand. So Electro-Right is an upside when things go badly. And I don't want to design my deck in a way that's what the cards do. And they're only good when things go bad.
Yeah, I think it's a 1 for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you on the 1 there. And then next up we have Spring Rocket. Spring Rocket is a 3-mana 2/1 mech. Battlecry, deal 2 damage. I've heard this compared to Argent Horse Rider, which I actually thought was a pretty neat comparison. The big difference is Spring Rocket goes through taunts. Spring Rocket doesn't leave you a 2/1 on the board if the board is empty. It just deals 2 damage to the face and it doesn't leave you a 2/1 Divine Shield on the board, sorry. You just get that 2/1.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison. But I currently, at the moment, you can just play 1 mana more and play Fire Plume Phoenix.
Sure.
So,
Which seems like better stats. I don't think there's a reason to play this for its mech tag either, because it doesn't stick on the board and it doesn't have magnetic. So I'm gonna give Spring Rocket a 1.
Spring Rocket 1 as well.
I do like the art though. It looks cool. Anyway, Cloak Scale Chemist. This is a 2-mana 1/2 with Stealth and Divine Shield. So it seems quite interesting if there's like a reason you want to just put something on the board. Maybe for like I've heard it being theorized for something like Combo Priest, because you can buff it and you're not under pressure to necessarily do anything because your opponent is going to struggle to interact with it. The fact that it has both Stealth and Divine Shield means it's not going to take damage from AoEs, at least the first AoE. And with Stealth, it's not going to be targetable. So I don't know. It could lead to some very uninteractive gameplay, but I'm not convinced that that's actually going to happen.
I think the 1/2, the stat line's a bit too weak for that, I think.
Yeah, I think that
so I'm going to give it a 1.
I think the big thing people overestimate sometimes when even like us now, when we're discussing the Combo Priest potential, is that it's actually just better to have it at a higher starting point, because it helps you so more easily get to the kind of combo lethal damage you want, because you have to do less effort buffing. You have to spend less cards, because you don't have to like Power Word Shield and do all those things as well.
Yeah, so
I think I'm gonna give it a 1. I'm almost tempted to give it a 2, to be honest. Actually, I'm gonna give it a 2. I think it has some fringe playable, because I think Stealth and Divine Shield is actually a relatively good combo to have on a card. I'm gonna give it a 2, although I'm not convinced it's gonna see any play now. But maybe in the future. Next we have Toxicologist. Toxicologist is 2-mana 2/2 Battlecry. Give your weapon +1 attack. This is just better than the Rogue one, right? That's a 3-mana 2/4 for like Kingsbane Rogue. I mean, if you want to play the 3-mana 2/4 in your deck, this is better. It doesn't require combo.
I mean,
it curves with Kingsbane.
Kingsbane is basically the only real deck it's going to. I don't think you're playing this really in Warrior or Hunter. I mean, I don't think...
Candle Shot is the reason to play it in Hunter. That's actually relatively decent.
Yeah, Toxicologist Candle Shot, I suppose, could be good as well. So
but
maybe... Yes, okay.
I'm going to say it's a 2.
Yeah, 2 for me as well.
I mean, at best. I think that's being a little kind to it as well. Next, we have Whirly Glider. And Whirly Glider is a 2-mana 2/1 with Battlecry, summon a 0/2 Goblin Bomb. No, I don't like these cards that summon Goblin Bombs.
The other one was a 2/1, a 2-mana 2/1 that gave you a Spark, a 1/1 Spark into your hand, which I think is arguably better. A 1/1 with Rush is arguably better than a Goblin Bomb. And
so a Spark in the hand is worth more than a bomb on the board.
Oh god, you're doing this again. Just go away. It's a 1. Let's move on.
It's a 1, yeah.
Right.
Next up, we have Upgradable Framebot. Upgradable Framebot, a 2-mana 1/5 mech. That's all there is to it. But that is exactly what you need in some kind of mech deck. I'm tempted to say it's gonna just be a staple in mech decks, but I'm not convinced there's a lot of good 3-mana magnetic minions. That's the sticking point for me. But I think even then, it still seems like a decent option in a lot of mech decks. So I'm gonna say it's a 4.
Okay, I'm gonna give it a 3 because I mean I do think it will see play, but I don't think it's as good as a 4. I think it's a 3.
Okay. Next up we have Goblin Bomb, the card that so many other cards are going to be summoning. This is the Goblin Bomb itself. 1-mana 0/2 mech. Death Rattle, deal 2 damage to enemy hero. So if you didn't know what a Goblin Bomb did until now, all it does 2 damage to their face. Good old Leponome effect, but it actually can't attack. No.
Yeah, so you have to try. You have to make. You have to go to You have to go to effort to actually trigger it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, oh, they don't want to attack into it, and then it gets bigger because it's a mech and you can curve. And no, thank you. I'd rather
Yeah,
play Mecha'thun, the mech that's coming up, if I want a 1 mana mech to,
sure.
curve into with my magnetic stuff. So it's a 1 for Goblin Bomb. It would be a 0 if I could.
And now on to Skaterbot.
Yep.
1 mana, 1/1 common. It has rush and is magnetic, and it's a mech. So this is kind of. I mean, it's obviously not quite Stone Tusk Ball, but it has magnetics, so it can just basically give a buff. 1/1 +1/+1 basically, and rush, which I think could have some niche applications. You don't really want to play this on turn 1, so I'm not quite sure.
I'm pretty convinced I don't like this.
Yeah.
On turn 1, the rush is irrelevant because
Yeah.
it's never sticking. All you can do is kill off something else, and I'm not sure that's really what I want to spend 1 mana doing. There's better examples of cards that can do that and generate boards, or that will do more damage. So I'm not convinced for that. It has to be something you attach to another minion, and I just don't want to have to spend an extra card to do that. I don't think giving rush to a card, giving rush and +1/+1 to another minion is actually worth putting a card in my deck.
Yeah, so I think that's unfortunately a 1 for me.
Yep, same. And then we have Mecha'thun. Mecha'thun is a 1 mana 1/1 mech with Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Joey Bot. Also a common. The Joey Bot is also a mech. So we actually predicted this. I can't remember which one of us said it exactly, but I mean, in a previous Magma Rage episode, I think it was, we said this is exactly what they needed. Yeah. The possessed villager of mechs. This is exactly what they needed for us to even consider playing mech decks. This into upgradable framebot, they're the bread and butter, or they're the bread that you can put the magnetic butter on top of, at least.
Sure.
So I think Mecha'thun, it's kind of a 3 for me. I don't see it even seeing as much play as upgradable framebot necessarily. I think it's only in the more aggressive mech decks.
I see it as a 4 because I think it's going to be like kind of what makes those decks decent and playable, I think.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that there's good 2 mana and 3 mana magnetic minions though. That's the trick I have. I feel like they come a little bit later, and that's the issue for me. I want the sticky minion on 3 because I'm not convinced about the 2 and the 2 and 3 mana
actually, I'll give
magnetic
it maybe
minions.
a 3. I think it's maybe I thought it was a bit too good. Yeah, I think I think it's only a 3.
Yeah. But if magnetic decks are a thing and they're relatively aggressive, Mecha'thun will be a decent option for them. And then finally, we have Faithful Lumi, who faithfully waited for us right at the end here. 1 mana 1/1 mech, battle cry, give a friendly mech +1/+1. It's kind of like magnetic, except you don't have to lose your Lumi. So ultimately, I don't want to play this. Like, I'm sorry, Faithful Lumi, but no.
No, yeah. I'm going to give it a 1.
Yep, it's bad on turn 1, and it's a 1-drop, so that means it's a 1. If my 1-drops are not playable on turn 1, I don't want them. So that kind of wraps up the neutrals. We did that in just over an hour, which is actually not too bad, considering there's a lot to discuss for the neutrals. If you like this, please make sure to go ahead and share. We will be updating over the next coming days before the expansion comes out, videos for every single class, as well as some deck lists for those classes, so you can have an idea what you can start building on turn 1, on day 1 when you open those packs, or even if you are going to one of the pre-release events. Hopefully we'll get at least some of them out before those pre-release events, so you can go ahead and go into those pre-release events with some extra knowledge, for playing in your fireside brawls that will be happening there. So thanks everyone for checking this out. One quick question. I mean, what is the neutral card that you're most excited about, Pandemonia?
The neutral card I'm most excited about.
Or, I mean, even maybe that you think is maybe going to be the most relevant. For me, like, it might be Giggling Inventor.
Yeah, Giggling Inventor and Ziliax probably for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Giggling Inventor is all that exciting, but I do think it's probably going to be pretty relevant. I do agree, though. Ziliax is definitely a reason I want to play mech decks. or I mean mech decks. I mean they're all going to be magnetic mech decks if they're going to be mech decks. And the other one is augmented Elec. I'm very excited to try that in
Yeah, of course you are.
in Rogue. Yeah, give me my Rogue neutral cards. Okay, so yeah, thanks a lot everyone for tuning in. Let us know in the comments your opinions on our ratings, if you think we got anything wrong, maybe where you would rate, which are your favorite neutral cards, and why you hate us because we hate on Mecha'thun. Until then, you can also check us out on Twitter. You can see our Twitter handles there. And enjoy and have a great Boomsday.